So I'm Frank Beauvais, I directed Just Don't Think I Scream, ne croyez surtout pas que je hurle.
Okay, very good. And yes, I want to start. A friend of mine, he always says about writing about film. He always says that words can stop images, and that's why they are important. I always think that also images can stop words. Now your film has both at the same time, a lot of images, a lot of words. So I wonder how you think about this relation between image and word.
I don't know, like we started with the images. It was very important for myself and the editor, I guess, to know all the images we're going to work with. And to get very familiar with the material we had.
Yeah.
And then, only then, after 4 or 5 months of categorizing these images and watching them over and over again, only then I started writing the text. And then, of course, we had to decide whether we were playing the relationship between images and words directly, or rather, for some parts, playing counterpoints or metaphor, or just playing on the symbolic of the images and what it could evoke in the mind of the spectator. It's not one against the other, but it's trying to provoke something in the mind of the viewer, going to and fro between both.
Yeah. And now you talk. It's very interesting that you say you start with the image, because, of course, there are some passages where it, like, I don't know, something is put on the table and it says it hit me or something. These kind of things. So both is very interesting. Maybe I start with the images. How did you? Because I want to ask, for what kind of images were you searching? Because they are very specific. They are like images that normally maybe escape even while you watch a film. So, and added to that, did that change the way you watch films?
We'd made with Thomas the editor, we'd made before 2 short found footage movies. I'd rather say stolen footage, because it's not really found.
Yeah.
And the rules of the game are always the same. I'm quite fascinated by these images that are usually functional in a classical fiction narration.
Yeah.
And thank you. And I guess most of us forget them really easily. Like there's a discussion in a bar, like we're just having, and there's Clark Gable and Joan Crawford, and you go from full frontal shot to another, and then she lights a cigarette, and then you go to a shot of the hand lighting the cigarette, and it's very functional. So most of the time we forget them afterwards, and I was kind of looking for that kind of shots, or shots where we have the landscape or the room before the actors enter.
Yeah.
And also looking for shots where we don't see the faces of the actors when they are professional actors.
Yeah.
I don't remember the end of the question.
If that changed the way you watch films?
I think I'm kind of, as we did it before, this found footage thing, my mind is always aware of these shots. Even now, 1 year after, when I watch a movie, I'm always think, I should do a new found footage movie, because this shot is extraordinary.
Yeah.
So it doesn't exactly change the perception of the movie, but in one part of your mind, it's still there. It's a light that is still blinking. And while doing the movie, because of course after 4 months I knew I would work on it. Maybe it influenced the films I chose to see, because I knew there were more of these shots in some kinds of movies. So I saw a lot of giallis at that time, or more film from the Soviet era. So yeah, in a kind of way, it influenced what I saw after a certain time.
Yeah, and then your writing comes into that,
Yes.
which is a writing that is both concerned with cinema, but also with your private, intimate life, and also with things happening around you. So maybe you just talk about how you went about writing this. Yeah.
Well, the idea was, it's not a diary, it's a retrospective chronic. Of course, when I write, I've already lived these 6 months. And I cannot separate cinema from my inner life. Neither can I separate political life from my inner life. They all intersect somewhere. But the technique I used was, I have a very, very bad short-term memory. So if you ask me what I did last Tuesday, if I had to answer police, it would be really, really complicated. So what I did was, the first step was to go through my emails and my conversations on Facebook, for instance, just to know where I was and the state I was in at a specific time, and also check my bank account to know what I did and where, and then try to draw a parallel line with the political events that happened, and reflect in the ways they affected me, and then do it, of course, chronologically. And the only part I knew I had to write, but couldn't resolve myself to write, was the part concerning the death of my father. I knew it was shedding an important light on the rest, because of course after he died in that living room watching a movie, it completely changed my own relationship to watching movies. So that is a part I wrote at the very, very end, and then decided to put it in front afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, would you agree that when I feel in this film this kind of like a reflection also on the way we perceive images nowadays, because there is this flow of images coming to us, it's hard to stop somewhere, it always goes on, life and everything is intertwined, as you described. There's like, is that a deliberate act, or is it just because you live in this world that it happened?
Of course I live in it, but the idea was for a moment to stop that stream of images coming from everywhere, and not to be only a passive spectator, to stop consummation and doing something out of it, to recycle, and to look from a distance and reflect what can we do with it. And of course the material I wanted to use was fiction, because I'm saying I've watched over 400 movies during that spell of time, but that was only fiction. I excluded all the documentaries and all the experimental films I usually watch, because I thought that wasn't the material that was right to rework Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. It does. Very good. Yeah, and I don't know if you've read the catalog text on your film, where I quote Hans Hoch, who famously said, "Cinephilia is a sickness." I wonder what you say to this statement, how you feel about it.
I think it's quite ambivalent, actually. Of course, it's a sickness, and of course, it's related to a way of fleeing from the world, to stay in a dark room. But then it's also a window on the world, and for me, at some point, it was really helpful to have films as friends, or is the only things I could actually have a dialogue with, because I was totally isolated at that point. And films also are linked to other people. It's very important for me to discuss a movie once I've seen it, and also to be able to give the envy to someone else to watch a movie. So I think it's on both sides of life, death or sickness. It really depends on the way you use it.